Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Joanna Ho, making the headlines on New Year's Day. Revellers in Hong Kong and other cities around the world ring in the new year with fireworks and celebrations. 31 passengers injured after their bus flips to its side in Tseung Kwan O. And cross-border travel could resume as early as next Sunday. Hundreds of thousands of revellers, including Chief Executive John Lee, rang in the new year along Victoria Harbour. Apart from 2022, many bade farewell to COVID restrictions, which were mostly lifted last week.
3、2、1，2023年新年快樂 ，Happy New Year！
Signaling a return to normality, Chief Executive John Lee showed up at the Tsim Sha Tsui Promenade last night to ring in the new year with revellers. Even his wife Janet made a rare public appearance for the ceremony, organized by the Tourism Board and broadcast globally. Police said around 330,000 people had gathered on both sides of Victoria Harbour to watch the special edition of Symphony of Lights. While the light and sound extravaganza was a toned-down version of the traditional fireworks display, which had been missing since 2019, many were still impressed. This boy indulged in the festive atmosphere, saying he hasn't watched a fireworks display for 3 years.
疫情嗰3年，大家都咩嘛，都唔可以咁 free 咁出嚟啊嘛。
This man felt grateful just to be able to celebrate freely without having to worry about social distancing restrictions. But he admitted it would be even better if the mask mandate is scrapped. Across the harbour, big crowds were also seen at the central harbourfront. Revellers partied late into the night at Lang Kwai Fong, even though there were no major countdown events.
希望下年有女朋友。
It was also time for New Year's wishes, and this man pinned his hopes on getting a girlfriend.
賺多啲錢然後去多啲旅行咁。
This couple hoped to earn more money so they can go abroad for a holiday, a privilege deprived from Hong Kongers in the past 2+ years.
Happy New Year!
The Lang Kwai Fong Association said with most COVID curbs scrapped, business for bars on New Year's Eve could jump by up to 70% compared to Christmas Eve. Hong Kong Bar and Club Association Chairman Chin Chen Wing estimated total revenue last night to hit $65 million, a 30% improvement from a year ago. As the hand of the clock swept past 12 o'clock, the race to deliver the city's first New Year baby was also on. That contest ended 43 minutes past midnight as Mrs. Chen gave birth to a boy at Union Hospital in Sha Tin. Welcoming their third child, the couple said it came as a pleasant surprise as they had expected a later due date. 3 more babies were born in the early hours of this morning, all at public hospitals, but media interviews were forbidden because of COVID. As dawn broke, more than 700 swimmers took a dip in the ocean at Middle Bay Beach. Officially called the Winter Swimming Life-Saving Championships, the annual tradition has been held for nearly half a century. The race was a relatively short 600 meters, but it's the spirit that counts. Elsewhere around the world, New Year's celebrations were in full swing following dismantled COVID curbs. And if you're tired of fireworks, the United Arab Emirates has something special in store for revellers. Chloe Fong reports.
For Americans, no New Year's countdown was complete without the famous ball drop in Times Square. Confetti rained from the sky at the so-called crossroad of the world in New York City, and the soggy weather did not dampen the mood of revellers determined to have a good time.
resurgence of the world after COVID-19, after the war in Ukraine. We want it to end and we want things to get back to normal again.
Across the Atlantic, London ushered in 2023 by painting the historic Big Ben with colorful lights, followed by an extravagant fireworks show over River Thames. Over 100,000 visitors watched the spectacle, which included a special tribute to the late Queen Elizabeth and war-torn Ukraine. Across the Channel in Paris, a similar display was staged at the Arc de Triomphe, as revelers gathered on the Champs-Élysées for the first time in 3 years to signal an end to COVID. And down under in Australia, which was among the first nations in the world to herald in the new year. Fireworks were set off over the iconic Harbour Bridge in Sydney, which welcomed more than 1 million visitors. But for those looking for an over-the-top experience, the United Arab Emirates may be the place to be. The Gulf state has taken the countdown event to another level. Apart from fireworks and laser beams, 15,000 nanolights and 452 drones were deployed around Dubai's Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building. Organizers were attempting to smash 2 Guinness World Records. While China continued to battle a fierce COVID outbreak after the government ended its 3-year containment policy, Beijing residents still took the chance to gather on the streets to exchange New Year greetings. In Taiwan, a dazzling fireworks show lit up the night skies around the Taipei 101 skyscraper. While traditional bell ringing ceremonies were held at the Bosingak Pavilion in Seoul, as well as Tokyo's Asakusa Sensoji Temple under different religious practices. After a tough year of skyrocketing fuel and food prices and unprecedented floods, Pakistanis in Karachi deserved a little celebration and hoped to emerge from the economic crisis this year. Chloe Fong, HKIBC.
Back locally, 31 passengers were injured after a double-decker bus flipped on its side in Tseung Kwan O this afternoon. The New World First bus ended up in the bushes on Lohas Park Road after mounting the pavement at around 5:15 p.m. It was taking passengers to Chimsha on route 796P. No skid marks were spotted at the scene, and police are still investigating what exactly happened. Paramedics set up a triage station by the roadside to treat the large number of injured passengers, which included 2 children. Most suffered mild injuries and were sent to Tseung Kwan O Hospital. The bus operator revealed the driver only returned to work after a day off yesterday and was not working overtime. The company apologized and pledged to cooperate with the investigation. There's renewed hope for people to reunite with family members on Lunar New Year, as cross-border travel could resume next Sunday. But the government said a quota will be set in the initial phase. Janice Low reports.
Hong Kong's number 2 official has brought a New Year's present to those longing to travel north. On social media, Chief Secretary Eric Chan announced that cross-border travel could resume as early as January 8th. The proposed date falls 2 weeks ahead of Lunar New Year and is 7 days earlier than the initial target set by Chief Executive John Lee. Chan, who chairs a group coordinating government bureaus on resuming normal travel, also confirmed that certain land border checkpoints will reopen. But he said in the initial phase, a suitable daily quota will be set. Lawmaker Michael Tian expected up to 100,000 travelers to cross the border every day.
I think they're going to start with probably 30 to 50,000 a day each way. However, if they start on January 8th, which is a lot earlier than I had earlier assumed, then by Chinese New Year, they would have built up to about 500,000 Hong Kongers being able to travel into mainland. I personally believe is close to the demand that we have for Hong Kongers wanting to travel and visit relatives that have been deprived of it for the last 3 years.
But unlike earlier rumors where certain groups will receive priority, Tian believed the quota will be distributed on a first-come, first-served basis.
I think it's just impossible to scrutinize how to differentiate between business nature and somebody who's visiting a relative or a friend. It's hard to prove.
The Federation of Railway Trade Unions, meanwhile, said the MTR's cross-border routes are ready to resume service. Janice Low, HKIBC.
Chief Executive John Lee pledged to restore Hong Kong to its pre-COVID days in his first New Year's message. He also set his sights on reviving the economy, starting with a business trip to the Middle East. Here's Janice Low again.
Flipping the calendar from 2022, the city's leader revealed in his maiden New Year's message his two goals for the coming year.
政府有兩大目標。
First of all, we will work towards restoring the way of life before COVID as far as possible, John Lee declared. Citing the lifting of most social distancing measures last week, the chief executive was confident Hong Kong's economy will revive rapidly. Many sectors are bullish about the outlook and are already hiring more people to prepare for a business surge, he said. Cross-border travel is expected to resume imminently, and with the support of the mainland, Lee was hopeful Hong Kong will once again shine on the global stage. The other goal, he said, is to implement measures proposed in the policy address. In an interview with RTHK, Lee acknowledged the net migration of Hong Kongers in the past few years. Many left to seek better education for their children or to reunite with family members. But the chief executive stressed that this was nothing new, describing Hong Kong as a city where people move in and out from time to time. As long as the SAR prospers again, he was confident both former residents and overseas professionals will be tempted to come. But it's not all good news. He admitted Hong Kong has to catch up with regional rival Singapore, the city-state which reconnected with the world much earlier. Lee is planning to take matters into his own hands with a visit to the Middle East in the coming months. If the trip goes ahead, he will become the second SAR official to visit the Gulf region in months, after Financial Secretary Paul Chan's high-profile tour in October. Janice Low, HKIBC.
While the world is busy moving on from COVID, there was no such luxury for Ukrainians, who are lucky just to stay alive from a fresh barrage of Russian strikes. Chloe Feng reports.
For Ukrainian residents in Kyiv, their only New Year's wish is a speedy end to the war. But for now, that seemed a far-fetched dream, as Russia hit the Ukrainian capital and other regions with more missiles, leaving at least one dead and more than a dozen injured. We survived by a miracle. I don't know how, this woman said after one of the strikes landed near her home. Instead of festive music, air raid sirens ran across the city, followed by explosions. Still, some residents shouted New Year's greetings from their balconies to cheer up their neighbors. The latest attacks came just minutes after President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed the people with a video message. He thanked the troops for their efforts in repelling Russian invaders and vowed to never forgive Russia for the massive casualties it had caused. In his address, Russian President Vladimir Putin urged his people to join the front line to defend the country's historical lands and signaled that the 11-month war will continue. Chloe Feng, HKIBC.
On to the weather now. The last day of the long weekend will start with light rain patches, followed by sunny intervals. Temperatures will range between 16 and 20 degrees. More sunny periods in the coming days. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's all the news on New Year's Day. Join us for updates at 11. I'm Joanna Ho. Thanks for watching. And on behalf of HKIBC, I wish you a great year ahead.